Welcome to the Ratnest podcast, episode number something, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, maybe, who knows, with illustrator Hank Simmons.
Welcome, Hank.
Woo! Today I am joined by my friend Jim Cox, as always, and
Evening.
We're going to jump right into this. Hank, how you doing, brother?
Never been better, man. Living the dream.
That's
Happy to be here.
Generic first question. How are you? Are you good? Everything great? Grand?
I don't think we're allowed to ask that during COVID. You don't get to ask anybody how they're doing because we know everyone is doing shitty.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we need to change that. Like,
even without COVID, I'm still doing shitty. So you don't have to worry about it. It's all.
Dude, let's come up with a universal because being too polite is kind of offensive, right? So let's come up with like a universal how are you doing without being polite.
Yeah. I think, I don't know how you do that. I mean, I've definitely probably been uncomfortably polite to people. But I don't know how you do that.
I think the only way you achieve what you're saying is with a statement. It can't be a question because questions leave it too open-ended. You'd have to be like, hey, you look good.
Yeah.
Rather than how you doing, like, hey, you look good. And then it starts the conversation on a different level.
I guess it's kind of like saying it is your birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes the happy out of it.
Yeah. It's there. I mean, there's no emotion to it. You're just phrasing a simple statement.
Yeah. So that's a weird note to start off on. I thought that was
So Hank, you look good.
Thanks, man. That was nice.
That was nice.
See, it feels good. We need to start that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to just start saying that to people and they're not going to like it. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave. I just walk up to people. I'm like, you look good. They're going to be like, get out. Yeah. I'm not.
All right. All right.
Asked to leave.
My bad. We won't start just telling everyone they look good.
All right. So a little background on Hank. He is an illustrator, works on his own independent comic that you can check out on Patreon called Blood Sermon. Does commissions for businesses and artists alike. What have you been up to in the last few weeks here since we just talked not too long ago, but the quality on our end we had some technical difficulties and had to scrap the episode. So anything crazy since the last time we talked?
No, I will make a quick side note. Thank you for saying Blood Sermon because I've had 3 people in the last 2 months call it Blood Semen. And so I'm really on it. I'll get a lot of people like, what is it? And I'll show them the. So I'm glad you got the sermon part. A lot of people drop the R, and it's not about that. It's not about that part. But as far as anything new, like I said, I just finished that comic book for Goatman. So like that's done. That got shipped. So commissions opened up pretty wide. I got a couple of people that kind of wanted some like private work. So really I've just kind of gotten back into doing the more paintery stuff where I'm back up in galleries. So it's just like super exciting because it's just cool to have art out. And so I'm kind of getting back into that, and I was announcing on my Patreon like later this week, but here too, Blood Sermon's about to start back up now that like the other comic's done. So like I can get back into the swing of that. So like there's a lot of back to like my passion stuff that I get to go back to. Not to say that like, like restaurant work and other kind of more commercial work isn't something I love doing, but it's kind of nice where I kind of give myself all creative control back to kind of just do random, like goofy, uncomfortable paintings again. So it's kind of nice to go back to like where I kind of like picked art up at a little bit. So that's kind of what's been new on that end.
Yeah. And your t-shirt for Tar River just kind of dropped this last week, I believe, right? And those are available.
Yeah. Yeah, I have them like beside me. I've been putting my hands up all over all of them. I've been touching them a lot. Like,
just loving them on?
A lot. I have put every single one on. I wear a 2XL and I squeezed into a medium last night, bro.
Yeah, dude.
I listened to Joy Division 4 hours wearing it. No, I'm excited about it, man. It's been cool, man. So I love getting to do the apparel thing. I'm not much of like a fashionable person. Most of my t-shirts make people mad, or like it's just stuff that they're like, what the hell is it? So it's like I'll wear sandals and socks in the winter. So it's like I'm not much of like a fashion person. So it's cool to get to do stuff where I just kind of supply the art and somebody gets to kind of piece it together to something that does look cool, because like you do appreciate like nice clothing. And like Ghost Beard, I know Justin, he's like a good buddy of mine. He did all the screen printing. And like I got him home and looked at him and I was like, holy shit. Like they look crazy. So it's cool.
No,
I have these t-shirts. Definitely want to.
I've got it up right here, and I'll make sure that we show it on the video. But the image is really dope. The fly that you've got going, and it kind of brings this counterculture, or if I dare say lowbrow art, to like a corporate, or I don't want to say corporate because it looks like it's kind of a local place, but it bring their logo and your art are complete opposite styles of art, and they're like able to incorporate that kind of other side of art in with it, and it fits great because it shows they're willing to embrace this side of art, not just with a logo, but then also having this really cool artistic thing on the back.
Yeah, no, man. And I appreciate that. Like, I love, as an artist, like you love hearing validation that like what you did, especially when it's weird that like people like it. But there's kind of a cool story behind that shirt. So my like really, really good buddy that like, I spend most of my time with, Will, who runs Tar River, is a fly fishing guide. And I drew that drawing for his birthday just to kind of, just like shoot the shit, be like, joke around, because the fly fishing community is full of like really weird dudes, like metalheads, like drunk dudes. Like it's really crazy. And like, so in a way on the outside, it does look like my art does stand out. But as far as like that community of guys, like it kind of fits right in. They're all kind of these like bananas, like weirdo guys. And so I just gave him the drawing as like a birthday present. And he was like, yo, like we should make shirts of this. And I was like, I'm down, like I knew a screen printer guy. Again, I'm gonna plug him again, Ghost Beard. If you need screen printing in like Raleigh area, great screen printer. So he was like, we should make shirts of this. He didn't have any merch at the time. And he does really good. Like he gets to guide a lot. He's done a lot of cool stuff. Tar River, if you're a fly fisher, do get guided by them. But he was like, we should make these shirts, and I was like, hell yeah, I want to do it. I love making clothes. I did t-shirts in the past of like this just weird, like monster thing when I was playing a lot of folk music. Like we wanted my folk music on the outside to look as like death metal as like we could. And then you've heard my music, it's so slow. And so like, we really like I love the idea of kind of just like flipping the lid on dumb shit. Like, and so that was what we did with the shirt, was like you have this very corporate, stylistic graphic design logo that's like super tight, super nice. And then on the back, you got this like dumb, like drunk as shit fly, like going fishing. And it kind of encapsulates like that community of people that like just, it's like the cut loose thing. And so I love doing it because I thought the same thing. I was like, fly fishing, like it's probably not dudes like me who are like covered in tattoos and stuff, but it's like it's just like a bunch of like crazy people, and it's super tight. So yeah, I'm excited about it. We've sold a bunch. There's a couple left, and it's we're gonna do a photo shoot this weekend, so you'll probably get to see me shirtless. So if anybody needs it, won't let me on OnlyFans, so you'll see me there.
Yeah. Hey, you got any extra larges left?
Yeah, I think we do. No, seriously. Yeah, if you hit the link, I'm like we have so many that I think we did 50. We've sold we probably got like 20 something left. So we do have extra large.
All right,
and they're super nice.
We're gonna talk after this so that I can get myself a shirt.
You heard it first, though. In addition to Patreon, you can check out Hank on OnlyFans. It's the same price as his Patreon. Surprisingly, it just depends on what content you want to see.
No, I tried to put Blood Sermon on OnlyFans.
Did it work?
But it only registered as Blood Semen.
Like nude content, they wouldn't let it on there. So like that's when I went to Patreon. Not to say Patreon's not great, but you should read comics on there. But yeah, I wanted to put it on OnlyFans just because like I thought it was funny, and that's probably indicative of like why like corporations don't hire me. It's just because I was like, dog, let's do it. Like, and so I was just like totally like, oh, this will be awesome. And like because like there was no nudity or like sex, they were like they just said no and they took it down. And I was like, well, that sucks. But
well, you know, Hank,
came up on Patreon.
There's always an answer to everything, and if you just hang dong and hold your paintings, there you go.
I've thought about that too, but then again, the last thing I probably need is for my parents to be like, oh, he's like going crazier and crazier. Like they'll be like, yeah, like all this, and then they'll be like, but he's just putting his penis on artwork. And so I think
he's an artist.
I thought about it. Yeah, it's just like, oh, it's like, no, but I don't know. That might be the move. Yeah, if I keep it up, you know, I probably will have to start selling my body with my artwork. So it might be a move.
Grab one of those paintings.
All right.
So I want to ask you this, man. So I kind of, for the people that follow you on Instagram, kind of see some of the process that goes into how you lay out some of the work or how you work on it. You do the line work first, right? So I brought the pieces that are available through Ratnest, obviously, because it's what I have of yours to show. But do you always work on line work first?
Yeah. So let's see. I'm like at my art desk, so I can give some good examples.
Cool.
So like, this is a piece that like I'm working on now that I'm probably going to eke after this. So it's like it's all pencil. So like you can see like it's all like the penciling, everything, no shading or anything like that. Just all outlined. So that'll get inked and then that'll get painted and then be like something like that one, you know, like that'll get painted and then I'll kind of work with that. But it's always kind of how you know, a comic book artist would do it, even when it's more paintery, like
right. You start with pencils and pens. Yeah.
And I usually like, unfortunately, because I'm such like a crazy person, I usually have like 3 drafts before I get to a final. So like I'll sketch something, I'll sketch it to a closer scale. So like if I'm doing it, like that one was 11 by 14, I'll sketch it to like a 9 by 12 and then I'll adapt and then I'll go, and then that'll be like the pre-inked final. And so I get a little bit compulsive when you're talking about like scaling, sizing, and like positioning. I get a little bit compulsive about like making sure things aren't totally centered because you really like, you know, stylistic, you really don't want stuff like flat on. And so like I get pretty compulsive about like stuff, even if it's loose, it has to like fit perfectly. And I think that's probably why stuff takes so long. But yeah, so I think I get really fixated on that. And so as far as like process wise, when I do the pencils, I essentially, and I've been working on it more to do more detailing, just inking. But I always want my penciling to be scaled perfectly. So I don't want to have to adapt from inking because inking is so permanent.
Right.
I was like,
it's like work out the details first.
Yeah. And then so I'll kind of ink and then I'll kind of I basically do outside to inside detailing.
Gotcha.
And then I'll lay paint. And so I'll do a base layer and I really, that like messy outside part, I won't add until the inside dried on the base layer. So I can kind of lay that underneath it.
So this is a good example of what you're talking about. I feel like you can kind of see where there's the outlining and then you brought in and then you put everything on top of it. And this is available.
Yeah, man, that's like one of my favorites I've done. I really love the green. That's all one green. Like that's not different colors of green.
Are you using watercolors or are you using acrylics just washed?
All watercolor. So everything I do is watercolor and ink.
So
I've done like other.
Sorry, how'd you get those different levels of green? I mean, with watercolor, for me, that's not too easy. I would have assumed that was like an acrylic that you made washes with, but
So that like yellowy color you'll see is like the first layer of green. So I did that, and then I did another and another, till it got to like it's like true pine green. And so it's a really really long process, but like I like I don't do that all the time. Like a lot of times, like I think at that point, like I just didn't have as many colors as I do now because I've adapted and it upgraded. But it was really a thing of how far can I get a color from its deepest to a lightest. And so like I don't ever consider myself like a painter, which is weird, because like I didn't paint really up until like my junior year of high school, and my art teacher like made me start painting. I wanted to do everything ink, and so I always considered myself more of like an illustrator and a drawer. So that's where like a lot of that like heavy layering comes from. It's just like I really like the build of colors. So I really like being able to take like a really like opaque green and take it all the way down to like it's strip yellow just using water. And so like that's what a lot of that was. And I think now more so I can use other colors mixed in to kind of do that to give it an even deeper effect. But a lot of it is just like doing it, eating shit on it, and like having to restart.
Yeah, I'm not a strong watercolor painter. It's not a medium I've used over the years much. I've used it to a certain degree, but I wouldn't be able to tell you how to accomplish what you're doing in these paintings with watercolors.
No, it's incredible, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, like one thing that's weird is like, and you could like ask my art teacher, which you would never see her, but which I hope not, because that would be terrifying.
Miss Karen? Yeah, I know Miss Karen.
What are you doing here? Like you just like grab her. Like, oh God.
We actually have her on the show. Miss Karen, come on in.
Yeah.
I would be out of here, bro. I'd be like diving through a window and shit. I'd be gone, you know? That's like X-Files. I'd be dead. That's like, you get murdered immediately from that. But like, oh God.
Oh, beer down.
I just dropped some. We're good. It was a Calvin and Hobbes comic. It's cool. But it fell. I have like this weird rafter art desk that's like shit. I hoard dumb books. But we were talking about painting, right? Getting into it.
Yeah. We were.
So I never, right, dude? Right? I find the segue. I get back to it. I find the tracks. So I didn't want to paint, and she was kind of like, you can't just, because being in school, you have to like, this was high school, so you had to like diversify. So it's like, you can't just keep doing this. You need to color stuff. And I just kind of picked up like a thing of watercolor, and I watercolored this like Captain America drawing. If you ever look at it now, it's absolute dog shit. So, but I just kind of went from that, and I was really into like an artist named Alex Pardee. I was really into David Cho. I love like that graffiti style. I love that kind of like, even if you look at my comics, I kind of took it with me with like Sam Keith stuff. I really like this like looseness people have where you really get the impression of what they're doing, but you may not get the full effect. Like I really like that kind of style where it's really weird washed over colors that are everywhere, but you have this really high detailed inked drawing within it. And so I was really into that. And so I kind of just tried to copy stuff, and like I couldn't do it because I cannot look at stuff and draw it. Like I don't do portrait stuff. I don't, because like I could not look at you guys and draw it. Like I'd do it and like it would be awful. So I can't do that. So I try to copy them, and like I couldn't do it. And I was really into like horror movies. I was trying to go to college to do like practical effects in horror movies.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
So it just eventually I learned, like in high school, like in my senior year, I just kind of kept messing around with the paint. I kind of learned how to just lay stuff over top of stuff and work over top of that. And it all kind of stemmed from like being scared to lay colors down. So you got this very like layered effect, because I'd lay like a really light color and I'd be like, oh no, that's too dark. And I'd go and do it again. And then eventually it would be dark enough. And so I think that like really transferred. Even now, where I'm very like a lot more confident as an artist, it kind of carried over to where I just kind of mimic that effect of just like building these colors on top of it. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely, dude. Like I get the dynamic of it, because it's similar through whatever medium you use to paint. I feel like the some of the process overlaps no matter what you're using. Just the I don't know, the boldness of these watercolors as opposed to some that I've seen. And I know it just depends on what kind of inks you're using, and or like pigments, whatever you want to call it, and how many layers you're throwing on there. But for a medium that's normally so I guess like lightweight, very very like light touch, these have like a firmer feel to them.
Very bold.
Yeah, very bold.
That's one thing that I can use to like express my art. It's just like bold art, it's bold line work and bold coloring. And I think like it is because I wanted to have that digital marker effect. I just don't know how to do any of that. So I was using watercolors. So it was just a lot of like lay a purple on the page and you're like, oh, that's too dark. And you start like washing it as you work, that wet on wet technique.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I found it to be more forgiving. I know like a lot of people, and this is no like regard to me being like, oh, I'm great. Like I know a lot of people struggle with watercolor, but for me, like I struggle with acrylic. I struggle with gouache. I can do watercolor gouache use a lot, but like I struggle with the mediums that people find pretty basic. And so it's like, it's the same with music. Like I'm pretty good at guitar. Like I played metal, like, but I'm horrible at guitar. And so it's like, I just struggle with like, yeah, it's bad, dude. But it's like, I struggle with those mediums that people would say are easier, like acrylic and stuff. Watercolor was a lot easier for me. And I don't know if it was just the ability to be very like minimal and light and kind of build the color, or if it was just, I was scared shitless of doing anything else. Like if you bring out acrylic paint to me like now, I'll probably like try to fight you. Like I don't know what to do with it. Like look at it and like squeeze, like I have no idea. And so it's just, I think it was like that comfort aspect where I was like, I feel comfortable doing this. If I ever do anything else, I'll die.
Dude, you were saying that like you know you liked horror movies and stuff, and like as part of your upbringing, was there? I don't know how old you are. We're pretty close in age, but was there like stand-up horror movies when you were growing up that like?
Oh yeah, like were there horror movies that like drew to me?
Yeah, like the ones that were like your favorites when you were a little kid.
Yeah, so the first horror movie I ever saw, I was like 7 or 8, and it was the OG Texas Chainsaw Massacre because my uncle wanted to show me the scene where he like ripped door open and like assaults that woman for some reason. No idea why. So that was like the first horror thing I ever saw. Like I grew up like, you know, like I grew up pretty religious, and so like it wasn't that like they wouldn't let me watch them, but it's just no one in my family was into horror movies, you know, like my dad's like a big baseball Seinfeld guy, my mom's a big true crime like ghost adventures person. So it's like they weren't gonna like sit there and watch Hellraiser with me. And so that was kind of my first exposure. And so I got really into like the old 80s like gore movies. And so like we had IFC, so I would just go through there. It's just like dates me. I'm 25, so like it makes you feel older. But do you guys remember cable? So like I would sit there like IFC movies, and all of them are like pretty gruesome indie flicks that like were unedited. So like cool, you'd see like nudity, but also you'd see somebody getting like sawed in half. And so it was all this really weird stuff, and I was like, well, this is really crazy. And then that kind of developed, like that was probably like, I was a lot younger. That was probably middle school. And then when I got into high school, I started getting really into Clive Barker. So freshman year, big fan, like Hellraiser, Nightbreed. And that was when I started getting into like Sam Keith, The Max, Mike Mignola. I started really getting into like comics. Because I was coming out of like being a metalhead, playing folk music. So it was right around like 15, 16 where like I was kind of just like, you know, not playing metal with my friends, you know, just started playing folk music. So at the time I was much more of a musician than an artist. But I started really getting into like Hellraiser. I started getting really into Nightbreed. I started getting really into Clive Barker. And then I started seeing his artwork. And that was right around the time that I was getting back into like taking art courses at school. And so I started really getting into like this. It was like the first exposure I had to like this weird. If you look at a lot of my paintings, it's like one piece is kind of telling a story. And that's where I kind of got that with Clive Barker. It's like he'll just have this piece and it may be like a kid and behind it will be a house with like a hand and the kid's got a bird on his shoulder or something. But it's like you can tell the piece is telling you a story. It's almost like a totem pole. And I got really into like that, and that really drew me into art as like really an avenue. I started kind of like really drawing stuff like that. I got really into like Alex Party, who does a lot of that like weird monster stuff. And that's where like the interest in horror movies kind of became like an influence, I think. And now you can probably see it in most of my pieces. I take like that pretty like satirical slant or like very like morbid view.
Yeah,
So
I really
think it,
I can't help but draw the connection with what you were saying between what you did with watercolor and then with the horror film movie, where you're literally saying, "Oh, if I add this, is it too dark? Is it too dark?" And then you're talking about these horror films that had influence on you, and you're saying like, "There's full blown nudity mixed with some guy getting sawed in half. Is it too dark? How do we balance this out?" And it seems the same with your watercolor as what that was influenced in these films, is finding that balance between the light and the dark, kind of, or the color that goes with it,
Yeah, and I think, I never probably noticed that, and I appreciate that. Like, that's nice. And I think me and you have probably had a conversation about it, Matt, where we were talking after I did that crucified rat, where I was like, obviously people are going to be upset about this. And like, I've done a lot of like darker pieces in the past. I've kind of been fortunate where I've been doing a lot of cool stuff, but it's always a little bit more of my like fun, bubbly, like dark humored, but like satirical work. And I really just wanted to do something that kind of pushed that, like, is this too dark? Is this too much? Is this too graphic? Like, I mean, like 2 years ago, like I had a full on painting of it's like a 22 by 30 of like a demon, like harpooning like a naked guy. And it's like representing like the folly of man. And then I had like a whole stigmata piece that were all like very like neo-religious influence, like as somebody who grew up religiously, who like has their own opinions. And so I was a lot of like reflection on like where you sit with that. But I hadn't done anything of like that volume in a long time. And as I had like progressed and gotten like better at inking, I really wanted to do something that was like very different, and kind of to show you that like you can look at that piece and say it's a representation of something religious, or you can understand that what is being happening to that person, i.e. like a crucifixion, is like totally secular. Like it's totally non-indicative of anything. And that was kind of like, if you ever seen the piece Piss on Christ, which was done, I couldn't remember his name, but he's I think he's French Catholic photographer, and he did a crucifix in a jar that looked like a jar of piss. And it was he was a Catholic, so it was to represent like what it was during like the grand schemes of pedophilia with the pedophile,
right?
Church,
it was a statement.
It was a statement of like what churches have done to dilute religion. And I grew up very religious, so like that was a piece that like really stuck to me, like, and represented a lot of the more religious criticism work I've done, is to kind of show you that like doesn't like. I liked the idea of like the ugly representation that was like a very important meaning. Like everyone, like that piece that he did got like destroyed over and over again, all because people were like didn't understand what he was talking about. Like they thought he was like shitting on God, but like the reality was like he was shitting on like the Pope, and like people just didn't click it. And so I kind of liked that like line you could tote of like, is this too over the line of criticism, or not even, or is this like, I liked it in the sense of like, is this too close to what people will claim to be like religious, that I can keep the edge of it's not, you know, and I kind of like that representation.
Do you get backlash on stuff like that you do? Have you had like any backlash on like some stuff?
Yeah, I've gotten backlash on people before. A couple, like there are some, and yeah, there are people that aren't like happy about it, and I understand that. Like, I'm never doing anything to offend anybody, but I am doing stuff to push my edge of weird that I can do. Like, I would obviously never do anything that's like actually offensive, and it's like most pieces are because someone has like decided, like, you know, and I can't change that. Like, I would never say they're wrong for feeling that way, but it's because they felt a certain way about some aspect that they felt represented something that it didn't. And, you know, and that's the kind of thing, as art is totally subjective. Like, I can't, you know, sit there and say that, like, oh, they're fucking dumb. You know, I would never. And so it's a thing of, I can't, you know, but it's also like my intention is I'm going to push the weirdness that I can push. So I understand.
The
like,
intention's not to hurt. The intention's not to hurt anybody, but it's also to make them think about like, this is kind of silly, or like this idea is, it's more of a joke than it's serious and presented in the way that's over the top, which makes it funny.
I think it goes even a little bit beyond that. Is the whole point of art is to make somebody feel something visceral, whether it's hate for the artist or I hate the picture, the depiction, or the story that it tells. If you can make somebody feel something through art, you succeeded. And what, you know, even though it's not to your exact audience, it is to an audience that you are portraying to.
Yeah. And it's like, I had one piece, and I think you've seen it. It's, and my dad is, you know, my dad's pretty straight-laced, but even he thinks it's funny. So like, that should let people know that, like, my dad was like raised, his dad was a pastor, and like, he went, you know, I went to a Christian school my whole life. My dad coaches there. So like, he's very, like, educated when it comes to religion. So he really knows his stuff, and like, he's got a good sense of humor. And I did this piece that was, it's like this guy like floating through heaven, and he says like, whoa, heaven, I definitely thought I was going to hell. And there's like this weird amorphous blob that's like God, and he's like, oh yeah, my bad, you're right. And it like sends him to hell. And like, I just played it at a, and like, there were people that weren't happy about it. Like, there were people that were like, I don't think that's funny. And I was like, I don't care. But like, I do get some backlash for some of the more like, you know, in your face or weird stuff. And I don't mean this disrespectfully at all to anybody. I'm appreciative of everything. I just don't care. I just, not in a bad way, not in like a, oh, this is tight way. Just like, I made it because I made it. Like, I understand, like, not everybody wants my art. Not everybody, like, not in a bad way. Not everybody's okay. Like, but it's not going to like deter me from like, oh, if there's something weird that I think I can do and get away with, like, I want to do it, not in a disrespectful way, just in a, I want to push my creativity as much as I can. But so I don't care. Like, not, you know, it's just, it doesn't hurt, you know, because I understand people's like recoils, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and you're not subscribing to the cancel culture that is out there saying, I don't like what you're doing, so stop doing it. You're saying, no, if you don't want to see what I'm doing, go ahead and not look.
Yeah, I like the counterculture stuff where it's like, it's very indicative of culture, but it's also the side where it's like, we don't necessarily want to talk about it. Like, being somebody who comes from metal, like, you know, like, I like the like idea of like grotesqueness or like vulgarity for the sake of being vulgar. And I think a lot more people understand that now with my work. They're like, you know, you're not indicatively being offensive. You're just saying, you know, like, I had that one piece that was like the bird shitting on the guy, and it just said like, hey, fuck you. And it said like, the guy standing there says like, if it ain't this, it's that. If it ain't shit, it's rain. And like, there were people that were like, liked the piece, and they were like, if you would have not put, you know, FU on it, I would have bought it. But it's like, if I wouldn't have put that on there, I wouldn't have drawn it, you know? So it's, right. It's, I understand that. And it's not in a negative way. Like, I get it. Like, nobody really, like, I wouldn't really want, like, you know, to hang the F word across my, but, you know, not everybody's the same way on it. So it's like, it never offends me. Like I understand where people come from. It's just somebody coming from like death metal, being somebody who very much loves death metal. It's like the offensive aspect, like in somebody like, you know, funny stuff, like the vulgarity part, like is like something that I think I picked up on a lot. Like when it goes back to the horror movies, like you don't have to like saw somebody's head off with a chainsaw, but like it makes the movie better. And so I kind of like that mentality, you know.
When you're drawing these things, do you have the sayings? Because I have a similar thing, I think, in my work, where I subconsciously will write something down, whether it's something I'm thinking or something that I hear on the radio, TV, whatever's in the background. My wife might say it. I'll write that down into the painting, but I don't necessarily go into the painting focusing about like what I'm going to write down. Like, is there one or the other that you do first with your work?
Yeah, I mean, it is one or the other. Like, if you look at like a lot of my pieces that have like a little quote in them, a lot of those are usually like quote first, and then like the piece, or a lot of them it'll be like the piece, and then I'll kind of have like one of these little quotes that were like floating around. Like if I like, you know, like a lot of times it's because like being somebody who used to play music, a lot of times like that songwriter part comes in where it's just like, oh, here's a little dumb quote. That's kind of what stems the artwork the way that like it would stem the music, I guess. And so I'd say it's about 50-50. And sometimes like truthfully, like a lot, like the picture I showed you of that piece that was like the two people like kicking each other, me and my friend took a picture of us like in a pose that was like messing around like that, like me and her. And so I was like, that's funny. That works for that, you know, that joking picture kind of spawned like the idea for the
idea,
piece.
right? Exactly. And then going into your Patreon with Blood Sermon, not to completely switch it up, but I was just curious, so we could talk about that a little bit. For, I think, is it it's $3, right, for your Patreon?
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's $3.
And in that includes behind the scenes, you do talk throughs, you do what?
Everything but my social security number for $3 a month. No, yeah. It's the entire Blood Sermon up until like page 12. It's the entire like unfinished comic of the first comic I ever wrote, Galactic Bounties, which is super dumb, but it was just something I threw on there. And then it has like process pictures of Blood Sermon now that like Blood Sermon's back. So I'll probably have a post this weekend of like, I just started a new page, which is exciting. It's been a while. You know, and so that'll be on there. So it's really going to get back into event, you know, hopefully back into full pages of Blood Sermon that I can get back to before, you know, as I like obviously want to finish it and get it like hard copied. But that, you know, that's kind of the plan, like to get back to it as being as full time as I could be. Working on other comics, like I was, you know, made sure with like the people that were reading that, like, you know, I didn't want to just like keep, you know, charging people. So it's like, hey, it's just work. And that's where like the other comic kind of played a part. But yeah, I want to get back to like right now you can read all of those comics in their entirety. And I want to get back to like being able to post like a page a week again. Cause it was super fun. Like I love like the weirdness of like people that like want to read something I made, you know, something that's just kind of just like this goofy, like almost abstract story a lot of times, because there's not a ton of dialogue. Like it's a lot of like image telling the story, just goofy, kind of like Dumb and Dumber version of like a monkey paw and a dude traveling through hell. Like, you know, it's just very goofy. And I wanted to keep that like weird edge of like goofy, like offbeat humor reality, like through the story. Cause you know, I kind of love that. And so a lot of it, like I just wanted to use like goofy phrases and images to kind of tell the story. And so that was like most of Blood Sermon. And it's probably my favorite thing I've ever got to do. I know that sounds biased, but it's a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. Well, it's your thing, and like you get into it and it means so much when you're working on a project And then when you don't work on it for a while and it's all you can think about and like getting back to it, it's nice when it kind of flows and you can just kind of click back into it and like pick up where you left off almost more naturally than you could when you were trying to force yourself to do shit sometimes, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. Like I find that like when I don't force pieces, they come out a lot better. Like when I just kind of naturally kind of work something out, like, and I don't sit there and just constantly redraw, I find that like it goes a lot better. You know? So,
You don't force it.
Sure.
Yeah, you got to try, but you don't force it.
Yeah, and that's something I struggled with a long time. Is like I always feel like if I'm not creating art, like I feel like I'm wasting time. Like if I'm at home, like not working on art, like doing these dumbass podcasts. No, I'm just kidding. No, like if I'm like, not doing something art related, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And that's like been something I've had to step back from. Like it's not, you know, in the wise words of Primus, like they can't all be singers. Like it's not every day. You're an artist regardless. And that's something that, like I've had to battle through is like feeling like I don't produce enough when oftentimes like I probably overproduce. And so that's something that like I've had to like adapt to.
Yeah.
Dude, I make shitty paintings all the time. Like it's so easy to get down on yourself when like something doesn't work out exactly like you want it to. At least for me it is. And then I'll be like, why do I even do these stupid paintings? Why? You know, like, so much crippling self-doubt.
And then you just kind of keep working on it.
Yeah. And sometimes they work out.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't. I still post them, like, you know, those dumb little like one-liners, like even if they're whack or stupid, like I still post them because like it's good to kind of be able to show like, hey, I did this, you know, it's whatever. But I think, yeah, a lot of times there's pieces where like I would like burn if I could, like, you know, like you would just see me like throwing them in the oven.
Yeah.
To get rid of them.
I keep them around and then I look back on them years later. I'm like, God, this was terrible. It's for whatever reason. I like to keep them close.
Yeah, I have a lot like that where I'm like, God,
I'm not gonna lie though, as a new artist, that type of behavior is actually what helped motivate me to do more art.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching my buddies who have done art and they know what they want and they know what they want it to look like, and they're throwing these paintings away that I think I've said this on the podcast before. I literally like collecting the shit my buddies throw away because I've seen it turn into something way bigger than what it actually started out as. And they're like, oh, this is shit. And I'm like, no, motherfucker, this is it.
Process work, man. Process work's cool. I have like tons of process work. I think it's important. Like, I think it's good, you know, to throw away old art. I think you should. But I think process work is important. Like, I think it's good to be able to see like this piece started as this and now it's this. Like, I don't think enough people are like, I think a lot of people are like, they don't want to share their process work. But I think it's good. Like, I like it. I like seeing like where something started, where it ended.
Well, that's kind of what we're doing with this. I mean, loosely talking about process and the process that people do to create and their process with commissions and how they handle selling their work, etc. So there's a process to everything, right? So let's talk about it and then get the information out there. People can learn from each other, and everyone's a little different and has a little different insight. But man, we're about ready to cut here. But I appreciate everything you do for Ratnest. I appreciate you being a part of it, man. Besides the Patreon and Instagram at Blood Sermon, anything else you want to shout out?
Yeah, you've got him there. Check out Catfish Doom. My buddy is Zach. I did that collab with. He is absolutely one of the coolest people I know. Super nice guy. Check out, dude, fucking hell yeah.
That's that Catfish Doom piece. David Moses. We just did that first episode with him. He's a pleasure to talk to. Nice guy.
He is the most motivating comic creator in the North Carolina area. I've met him like one time at my old job where I just neglected my work to talk to him. And I would fight off a group of people for him. I don't even care if he was wrong. Like, I got you, you know? Check out my friend Jamie's art.
Say that one more time.
Jamie Vincent art. She's awesome. I've done collabs with her. Another great artist. But yeah, man, read my comics, buy my art. If you're a death metal band, I want to do your album cover. Please find me.
Let's do, I just had a weird idea. Let's do a print, and I'll do it through Ratnest, and anyone that buys the print will get an access to your Patreon. Like the $3 will be included, and then they can follow you and be like more tied to what they're buying.
Yeah, 100%. Hit me up about it. I would be down. We could find a good print. We could do a new piece. We could, I'd be down as hell. That'd be tight.
That sounds like a good idea, man. Like, I don't know why that just popped into my head, but it'd be tight.
Because we're awesome, man.
Hey, all right.
We are.
All right. One more time. This was Hank Simmons, artist illustrator out of Raleigh, North Carolina area. Go check out his work at Blood Sermon on Instagram and Patreon. Thanks, man.
Seriously, Hank, it was a pleasure talking to you, man. Take care of yourself.
Love you guys. You guys are my heroes. Catch you later.
We'll talk again soon.
Don't do that. See you, boys.
Later on, bro.
See ya.
Oh, shit.
Oh, that was really good.
That was great. This has been another episode of the Ratnest Podcast. You can find us every week at Ratnest Podcasts on all platforms, and YouTube for the videos, and Ratnest Sticker Co. on Instagram for all of the art available for purchase.
This was a great episode.
It was a good one. Hank likes to party. We like to party. Hank likes horror movies. We like horror movies.
It was just, it was symbiotic the whole time.
Yeah, no, it was great. And that was like the third interview we did with him, because the first two, all of our equipment didn't work.
Yeah, I kept just messing up real bad. But you didn't know that. Now you do.
So you heard it first for the third time. So thank you for listening to the Ratnest Podcast, and we'll see you next week.